Ignorance is a disease. Ignorance is a disease that sometimes is worse than terminal illnesses. If you look at the way my brother Jared argues his point as to how they have now discovered new evidence, you would be very surprised as to which Kenya Jared lives. And you will recall that the Supreme Court in 2017 said that the election will no longer be done at Bomas, it will no longer be done at IEBC. The election will be done at the polling center, and the results will be announced at the polling center. All the candidates will have their agents signing the results at the polling center, and that is where the election will end. And if you recall what we did this time round, all the agents signed the results at the polling center, and the results were put online and immediately were received at Bomas, where the agents were also seated. And then agents would come together with the election officials from the polling center to the county tallying center, and then these results would be collated together and then taken again to Bomas. And at Bomas, at every table, the officials there, including the agents, would go one form by one. Of course, they also had their own copies, and then they would go through the copies that were presented in the system and physically. And at that point, a decision would be made as to whether those election results are valid. And that happened bit by bit, polling center by polling center. And that is why it became very difficult at the Supreme Court to query the results as they were. And if you remember, at some point, the Azimio Brigade tried to bring the issue of Carmago, who they said is the one who was conducting or was stealing the election. And clearly, the Supreme Court dismissed that one as hot air. And the process they had called opaque was demonstrated clearly by the election officials and of course, the two sides, that it was not opaque at all because the process was open. The issue of opening a server does not arise at all. The Supreme Court made a ruling in 2017 guiding the change in the law so that we do not have a closed server anymore in coming elections. So an election now is as open as a book. And so when sometimes you listen to the argument that are being advanced by the Azimio Brigade, you can clearly see that these things are far-fetched. It's more than fiction. And that's why the resistance probably that has been discussed is not going to be coming from government. No, the resistance will come from wananchi themselves, because Kenyans are also tired. They can clearly see that the issue that is being propagated here and pushed has much more to do with selfish interest. It doesn't have to do with Kenyan interest. And I think the Azimio Brigade, they do not love Kenya. We have come from a system where the country was ravaged by a handshake, where the country's economy has been brought to its knees by the handshake system that was operating for 5 years. We have also come from a system, from a situation where we had COVID, which also ravaged this country. We have had drought, and now the Azimio Brigade want to come and add on the normal Mwananchi, on the common Mwananchi, another problem based on their resistance or their refusal to accept the legitimate government, and of course derailing the economy even further. I think many Kenyans will be able to resist this, because Kenyans now, what they want is a revival of the economy, because they are barely surviving. They have a challenge with the economy and they want the revival. Yeah. And they should allow His Excellency the President, the Kenya Kwanza government, to work hard to be able to revive the economy. Okay. And so I'm looking at this and I'm seeing there's a lot of ignorance that is being propagated here. And this ignorance, the people propagating this ignorance, they know they are doing that, but they are trying to hoodwink people. And you cannot take advantage of the openness of our constitution because it allows for demonstration and picketing. Then you should not take advantage of that to misuse the clauses in the constitution to mislead Kenyans. And I want to urge all Kenyans to kindly resist that kind of attempt to take them back to the road, to take them back to the streets, to take them back to picketing and to demonstrations. And you will be very surprised at some of the things that were said yesterday. I listened to the MC who talked yesterday, and he said that they are going to be marching to State House. And those who die will die. Those who will live will live. You can look at that carelessness that is coming from an elected leader. And I would wish he comes with his children and they lead that march to State House, or they lead the demonstrations, and they are at the forefront of that. But what will happen? The gentleman will not even turn up, or will be at the back. Look at my brother Jared. He was not at Kamukunji at all. He was not there. And you will not even go to Jakarta. And they are telling other Kenyans to go and die. I mean, Kenyans are not that naive. They know when they are being misled. Okay. They will resist that kind of misleading utterances. You saw how His Excellency the President was received in Nyanza recently when he went there. Clearly, these guys have been on record. Okay. And I remember Babu Owino praising His Excellency the President and telling, man, you are a serious man. You are able to bring down a whole deep state, a whole system when we were doing this election. And can you imagine Jared sitting there telling you that His Excellency the President now, Ruto, did steal an election where the Raila Odinga was actually being propagated by the deep state, and they could even go to the rallies to pride themselves of the support they are having from the deep state and the systems. In fact, they could ask, how can the deep state be defeated in an election? And at some point, I remember the cabinet secretary then, Mushero, saying and assuring Raila Odinga that don't worry, we are in charge. We are working on the systems. Some of us are not talking a lot, but we are doing so much. And of course, you remember the uproar that we had at that particular time. I mean, these guys tried everything possible, even electing, or rather appointing 4 IBC officials to be on their side. And they thought it's going to be a game of numbers. They did not know that the numbers which were needed were the numbers on the ground. It's not the numbers in the boardroom. It's not the numbers in the IBC. And that's why this issue of election at the IBC must be stopped. I mean, we must stop talking about new discoveries at the IBC level. No, the election was not done at IBC. Okay. Any person claiming and pretending to be a whistleblower from IBC doesn't know what they're doing. The election was done at the polling station. Okay. And that is where we finished the election. Everything else is fiction, is hogwash.